Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining us here for our afternoon session of Ask an Angler, talking about trout fishing today in lakes and ponds. So, all of our lake and pond fishing trout here in Oklahoma are going to be seasonal trout fisheries. We have three ponds in the state. Two of them are in the Oklahoma City metro. One of those is going to be over on the west side of town in Yukon. It's called Route 66 Park. And the other one is in Oklahoma City, over east of I 35, basically just right outside of downtown. It's called Edwards Park. We also have our Veterans Park Pond up there in Jinx, which is in the Tulsa metro. So those are kind of your close to home areas. If you live in the Oklahoma City or Tulsa metro, those are going to be small bodies of water that are going to be right there for you. They're small bodies of water. They're stocked from December through the end of February. Usually get stocked somewhere between like 6 and 8 times. Usually every couple of weeks, they'll get a new batch of a few hundred fish. So usually by January, February, the fishing is going to be a little bit better. There's going to be more fish in the water, more opportunity to catch those fish, but they're in there now. Our lakes around the state, we have a few. We have one up in the Panhandle in Guyman, Sunset Lake. We also have our trout fishery at Roman Nose State Park. It's typically in Lake Watonga. Lake Watonga is closed currently for dam renovations. So those fish are being stocked at Lake Betcher, which is pretty much in the same parking lot as Lake Watonga. You drive right by it as you're driving into Lake Watonga. Little smaller body of water, so a little bit easier access to getting into those fish. And then we have Perry Triple C, which is just north of the Oklahoma City metro and west of the Tulsa metro. It's about a mile south of Perry, which is located right off of I 35. It's 15 minutes up the road from Stillwater, and it's a nice little lake, great public access, good shoreline access. For most people, 75% of the bank is available for fishing. For other people who can maybe throw on some waders or some muck boots, you can actually fish 100% of that lake from the shoreline. Outside of that, I'm going to lump in Medicine Creek and Robbers Cave into this segment just because those are, even though they're creeks, they really have no flowing water. They're going to fish more like you would fish a pond or a lake. So what we're going to go through is basically what is your best setup for catching trout out of still water in lakes and ponds. What that's really going to require, what type of equipment should you be looking for, what type of bait or lure you should be looking for. This is going to be, there's lots of options out there for trout fishing, just like there is for any other type of fishing. So to each their own. You're probably going to hear stories from people who, they got their go-to bait of choice or their go-to color of a bait. And we're just going to go through, what's going to work. If you're new to trout fishing, or maybe you've done it a few times, haven't had a lot of success, these just few simple tips are going to get you on fish. And some days at some of these bodies of water, you could have a lot of success, high catch rate days, at least getting bit more often. That's kind of the goal of these asking anglers, is putting you in the right position at the right time to get as many bites as possible. You as the angler have to learn, to set the hook, to land those fish. But first and foremost, getting in the right spot, using the right equipment, getting the bites to then find success and then build confidence and go from there. So I'm going to start out with bait first. So anytime you go fish still water, and in reality, even if you're fishing our year round or even our seasonal, more river type fisheries, Blue River, Mountain Fork, Lower Illinois, bait's always going to be your number one option. These are hatchery raised fish. They were raised on pellets. They don't live in our water bodies for very long. They don't survive the winter. Or they don't survive the summer, excuse me. So they're a wintertime fishery. And they're just, they're scent based. So even when you put them in a creek or a lake or a pond, the acclimation period for them to really start targeting natural food sources within those water bodies is limited. They will, however, they're going to still be targeting, bait more often than not. So, At any point in time, if you have any questions during this, or I went too fast, or something spurred the conversation, please use the chat bar. We'll address stuff as we go. This is an hour course. Typically, we do these Asking Anglers as a 2 hour, but these are kind of rapid fire trout series. We've done artificial lures, bait fishing. We did fly fishing this morning. Tomorrow, we'll be doing Blue River, Lower Illinois, and Mountain Fork as their own segments on tips for trout fishing there. So feel free to use the chat bar, ask questions, we'll answer them as we go. So bait fishing, what trout bait is, most of the time is going to be power bait. It's going to be a dough-based paste that's called power bait. It's going to come in a lot of different colors and scents. They're going to come in bottles that look like these. You're going to see stuff that's different color. They're going to have glitter in them. Some of them are going to be advertised as having natural scent, extra scent, garlic scent, corn scent, shrimp scent, nymph scent, all different types of stuff. People will utilize one type of power bait. They'll have success somewhere. They'll have success somewhere else. It'll become, this is the type of power bait you need to use. Most of this stuff is going to catch you fish. There's not going to be a big difference between the yellow one and the green one and the purple one. They put off scent. These fish need to feed. They're going to go into things that are scented that, they looks like food. They're going to eat it. So utilizing power bait fished off the bottom is going to catch you the most amount of fish right out of the box, right when you go fishing at a pond, lake, or a creek where the trout are, where the water's not really moving. And so what you need for that is a bottom bouncing setup. So for your fishing equipment itself, what's ideal tackle to have? Your rod and reel, depending on if you're using an open face spinning reel or a button clicking spin casting reel. You may even use a bait casting reel. You may be a big angler into bass fishing or something else where you use bait casting equipment. Haven't trout fished before, that's what you got. If you have a medium action rod, that's what we're looking for. A medium or a medium light action fishing rod of any size. You could use as small as a 5-foot rod all the way up to a 7.5-foot rod. That's not really going to make a difference. What we're looking for is a sensitive tip of the rod, which is going to be a medium or a medium light, that still has enough backbone that when the fish is taking the bait, you have enough backbone to set the hook on the fish. So if you don't own a fishing rod or you're looking to buy one for trout, any basic cheap level combo model of a spin caster or a spinning reel, medium light, that's going to do great. A lot of the spin casting equipment is going to come pre-spooled. So there's going to be line on that reel already. More than likely, it's going to be 10-pound test, maybe 8-pound test. It's a little heavy, but it's going to work. For line, what you really are looking for is utilizing like a 6-pound monofilament line. That's going to be ideal line. You can go as low as 2. You can go as high as 10. 6 is a good happy medium. Monofilament is great if it's your main line, whether it be on your spin caster, your bait caster, or your spinning reel, because it has floating properties. And we're using bait that ultimately floats. So if you used a braided line, connected it to a swivel, or tied on line-to-line transfer with like a fluorocarbon or a monofilament, you can get away with that. Fluorocarbon sinks and it nicks and frays, and we're fishing off the bottom. It's not your ideal line to use when bait fishing with trout. You can still use it, still work, but there's going to be some things that could potentially create barriers to your success. So for all intents and purposes, a medium action rod spooled with 6-pound monofilament test is your ideal setup for trout fishing. From there, what we're looking at is our terminal tackle. What does our hooks and weights look like? We are looking for really small hooks. So in fishing, when you see hook sizes, they're going to range in lots of different numbers. The higher the number, the smaller the hook. So a size 14 hook, like a treble hook, is going to be about that small, less than the size of my fingernail. And then a size 12 would be a little bit bigger. A size 10 would be a little bit bigger. And then we start getting all the way down to 0. And then we see 1-0, 2-0, 3-0. Then if they have a dash next to them, then the higher number gets bigger. But if it just says size and a basic number, the higher the number, the smaller the tackle. So what we're looking for is somewhere between a size 8 and a size 14 hook, whether that be a treble hook or whether that be a single point hook that's going to be labeled something like a salmon egg hook or a mosquito hook or an octopus hook. They're just going to be hooks like this that aren't long shanked. So that means that the hook point and the eye hole are either even or really close together. We don't want long shanked hooks, even if they are a size 10, a size 12. We're looking for a short shanked hook because we're either using power bait or we're using some type of egg or marshmallow type bait to put around. So this is what you're looking for. Real small hook, either single point or treble hook. Treble hook is recommended if you plan on keeping your fish. If you want to catch those fish and keep them, take them home, use a treble. You got 3 points instead of 1. When that fish goes and grabs the bait, more likely chance of you being able to set the hook. If you plan on catch and release, or maybe you're looking to target only a certain size fish and you're going to release some of the smaller ones, single point hook, where that barb is at right there, take some forceps or some pliers, and all you're going to do is you're going to pinch that barb down. So you grab it right on the hook shank where that barb is at, and you're just pinching down and pinching that barb off if you're not familiar. Pretty hard to buy barbless hooks at retailers. So normally you got to buy a barbed one and just pinch down real good. It's going to eliminate that barb, or at least pinch it down enough. That's going to give you the best opportunity to be able to release fish. But the biggest thing so far in trout fishing, ponds and lakes, medium action, medium light action rod, spooled with somewhere between 2 and 10 pound test, preferably monofilament, preferably 6 pounds, and then a small hook. So if we were to rig this, we are fishing off the bottom. So what we're looking to do is utilize the fact that we have a really small thin wire hook that doesn't weigh very much. And you're utilizing something like a paste power bait or something that maybe is like listed as salmon eggs or power eggs or marshmallow or something that's just labeled trout bait. Doesn't really matter. Something that's going to be flashy, scented. That's all you need. It's floating, so it's going to come up off the bottom. So if this was our main fishing line right here, this is what's coming off of your rod and reel. This is the easiest way to do it. There's no simpler way. This is going to be the most effective way to trout fish, give you the most options and availability to switch up what you're doing fishing off the bottom as quickly as possible. That's going to be what's called the casting weight. So a casting weight is kind of a teardrop shaped piece of lead with an eye hole on it. You could use a bullet weight, you could use an egg weight, you could use different types of sinkers. This one is ideal. It's a casting weight, catches the wind. When you go to cast, it can cut through it, sits really nice on your rod. Like when you go to whip it, it's called casting sinker for a reason. So this is what I prefer. These are easy. What you're looking for is a 1/8 ounce up to a 1/4 ounce. So I prefer a 1/8 ounce. If the wind's not blowing, if there's no current, 1/8 of an ounce. What we're looking to do is just provide enough to get down to the bottom and have it hold there. So you don't need a lot of weight, and trout aren't very big. And so, they're not going to come in and engulf the bait. But if it's windy, maybe there's something that's affecting you being able to hold the bottom. You can go up to like a 1/4 ounce. That's plenty. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your main line. We're going to thread through that eye hole, and we're going to put that weight on our main line. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to tie on your hook. So whether you're using a treble hook or one of those little egg hooks, we're just going to tie that on. Whatever fishing knot you like to use. Your best bets are going to be probably an improved clinch knot, maybe a trilene knot, or a Palomar knot. So we're going to put that on, tie it off, and then we're going to cut off the SX tag. leaving just a little bit for line slippage. So you don't want to clip it too close. So we got our tag end off there. Just going to clip it right down, leaving just a little bit of tag end. So it's going to look like that. All right, so now we have our hook and we have our casting weight on here. Well, our casting weight is going to be able to move up and down the line. We don't want that. We want it to stop, but we want it to stop at the depth that we want to fish off of the bottom with. So when this lands on the bottom, it's going to sink down, and then your hook with that power bait on it is going to float up like this. So if this is on the bottom, this is up off the bottom. So depending on how far you want to get off the bottom, typically somewhere between about 8 inches and 16 inches is going to be right in that wheelhouse. So why I like to do this as opposed to using a swivel or a snelled hook, which you can use and they work fine, but this is the easiest, most effective, because we can take a piece of split shot. We put that split shot on the line between our casting weight and our hook. Then you're going to take pliers, pinch that down, crimp it nice and tight onto your main line. That's going to stop our casting weight. So now our casting weight can't go anywhere, and we got about 12 inches from where our hook is, from where our piece of split shot is. So that means when this hits the bottom, your power bait or your egg is going to float up, and you're going to be about a foot up off the bottom, just like this. But by having this real small piece of split shot, so what you're looking for in your split shot, and this one is probably a little too big, you're looking for something just big enough that can stop that eye hole. So if the eye hole can't go over the split shot, which in most cases can be the smallest piece of split shot that they make. So that's what you're looking for, because what we want is when you cast this out, you let it sink down to the bottom, you close your bail, you engage your reel, you start reeling up your slack. And what you are looking for is from your rod tip to when you're hitting the water, you want this to be nice, straight, and tight with the rod tip. Maybe the rod tip even has a slight bend in it. Means you're really nice and secure on the bottom. So when that fish comes to hit that power bait or your egg and you get a bite, it is able, if it is pulling away from where you're at or in a direction of sideways instead of coming right at you, it's going to be able to pull the line with the bait through the sinker, which means it doesn't feel any tension. Because what will create barriers to success when you're bait fishing with the fish like a trout that has a conal shaped mouth, it doesn't have the circle mouth like a bass or a crappie or sunfish that opens it up, creates a vacuum, sucks the bait in, or a catfish that's inhaling that bait. Trout are going to try to peck at that bait. They got to get it to the back of their throat. They have that conal shaped mouth. So when they're eating on that bait, they're trying to get it back each time, grabbing to move it back. If they can feel that weight that's on the bottom moving with that bait, they are more than likely going to leave it alone. They're going to peck at it. They didn't get it. You didn't set the hook. They're going to leave it alone now because they feel that pressure that's pulling against them. And that's what fish hate. If you've fished long enough or you fished with bait, any species, you could have a fish hooked. It could be hooked in its gullet with that hook. The hook point's not what bothers them. They eat stuff all the time that has pinchers and barbs and everything else. They're used to feeling, what we would consider pain in their mouths and gill plates. What they're not used to is pressure fighting against them, which is when you set the hook on a fish and they feel the tension of the line to your rod tip, that's what stresses them out and that's what creates the fight. Same thing goes if you're fishing with bait. If they feel the tension fighting back against them, they're going to leave it alone, not because they felt the hook points of your treble hook, but because they felt that tension. So this is the most effective way to set something up. And now we can adjust our weight too. So if you think you're too far off the bottom, then you can just go ahead and slide that weight down. And now we're only about 6 inches off. Or you think you need to be deeper up off the bottom, then we pull it back the other way. It's still tight enough that when you go to cast, it doesn't slip on your line, but it allows you to be adjustable with your bait, which again is the most effective way to catch trout in lakes and ponds or still water. So what do we do with our actual bait itself? If you're going to use a power bait, something that is the paste kind, so you have to physically take the paste out of this and then put it on your hook. What you're looking to do is just stick your finger, preferably your index finger or whatever finger you use that is the most dexterity for doing things. And you just want to get enough to cover your fingertip. And then whether you're using a treble hook or a small single point hook, you're looking to get just enough bait on there to cover up the hook point. If you put on too much bait, a big glob, so just like that is perfect. All of our hook points are covered. We're sealed around, and this is going to float. What you don't want to do is take out so much power bait that it's just this huge glob, which this doesn't look that much bigger, but this is about 3 times as much as what we originally had on there. The problem with this, even when we've set up our rig to be as effective as possible where they can't feel the tension, what ends up happening is that fish comes up, it starts pecking at it. You start getting bit, you go to pick up your rod, you reel up your slack, you can feel the tension, you go to set that hook. Well, there's too much power bait on there, so one of two things is probably going to happen. First off, you're going to go to set that hook, it's going to pull right through the power bait, but because there was so much power bait on it that was in that fish's mouth, the hook just comes shooting out. Or what's going to happen is there's so much power bait on there that fish is able to peck it relentlessly without getting the hook point, and it's easy to pull off, that eventually you lose your power bait, falls off, or it ends up in the fish's mouth. You go to set the hook and the fish isn't there. So best part about bait fishing for success, using just enough power bait, whether it's a single point hook too. So if we had a single point hook, you'd take that glob on your finger, press it up against one side of the hook, and then just wrap it around just like Play-Doh or something and create a little teardrop shape around that. And that's all that you need. And that's going to give you the best opportunity when that fish starts to bite. So once we've gotten that far, you're rigged up at this point now. You've got your bottom bouncing rig, you got your power bait on, you're ready to cast. You go ahead and cast that straight out. What you're looking to do is, find shelves and ledges at a pond or a lake, and just cast it straight out. Let it fall down to the bottom, reel it up, make sure you get that slack out of your line, and have it tight to your rod tip. And you're either going to get the quintessential, it's pulling either perpendicular or parallel with you, or it's pulling away, and your rod tip's going to go. You pick that up, make sure there's no slack. If it's still bouncing or there's pressure, set the hook. What also can happen is they hit it coming at you. So your line will be tight like this to your rod tip. And then all of a sudden, if you had a little bit of a bow in your line or the line's taut, it's just going to release. And you're going to go from having a tight line to slacks. And in that case, the fish could have it in its mouth already and be swimming at you, or it could still be pecking at it, but because it's towards you, you're not getting any resistance from the rod. Just reel up slowly, there as slow as you can go, and until you either feel the steady bounce of the rod tip or pressure pulling somewhere that's not towards you. Then set the hook, reel the fish in. If you plan on releasing fish, get your hands wet before you handle them. Trout don't have mouths like bass. You can't lip them, so you're holding onto them either from the belly or from the top. But when your hands are dry, you remove the healthy slime that they have on them that protects them from bacteria. And what ends up happening is you remove that from them, and they can pick up parasites, diseases, other things. So best fish handling practices for trout are going to be wet your hands before you hold on to them. So that's the most effective way. Straight out the box, going to a pond or a lake, this is how you're going to catch the most amount of trout any situation. Bottom bouncing rig tied directly onto your main line with a 1/8 ounce up to a 1/4 ounce casting weight and a piece of split shot and some power bait, or some type of marshmallow or power egg. And same thing with these, you just slide them, cover up your hook points. That's going to be the most effective route. The same exact setup that you can accomplish in a couple of different ways that require a little bit more work, take away some of your flexibility of handling, all of fishing off the bottom, is using what's called a snelled hook. So in some cases, you go into a retailer, local bait and tackle store, you may not be able to find hooks that are small enough. You're not going to be able to find maybe size 10, 12, size 14 hooks. But what you may be able to find is something that's called a snell hook, which is, a size 8 to size 10 or 12. Sometimes you can buy them in like a value pack, something like this, where they have like 4 different sizes, and you just find whichever one is, the most comfortable to you. So we have that. The only problem with your snelled hook is that you're limited, right? So that's your leader length. That's as far as you can go. You can take the same exact setup with your main line, and you can take a little snap swivel. And we take the snap swivel and we'll do the same exact thing that we did with our previous setup, which is just take your main line right here, slide your casting weight on, just like this, put it on that main line. Then you're going to tie on your snap swivel. And once we get that snap swivel tied on there, you can cut the excess tag off. So you cut that excess tag off. And then we're going to take our snelled hook, which has a nice little loop on it. And then we're just going to put that in the snap swivel, and we're going to pull that up. So the only limiting factor of this will work just as fine as our previous setup. The only difference is you no longer have any flexibility on how far off the bottom you are. You're only going to be as far off of the bottom. It's going to sit on the bottom just like this. That's going to pull up. So you're looking right here, about 8 inches off the bottom. That's probably plenty. So this is also a good effective route. This swivel, you're going to look for like a size 10 to 14 swivel, super light, weighs about as much as that piece of split shot. So same thing, fish starts to bite, that slides down this, no tension, no nothing, you're able to set the hook. Those are your 2 easiest bets for setting up. If you wanted the flexibility, let's say, to use a snelled hook, but you also wanted to get a little bit farther up off the bottom, this is not as recommended because it puts another knot in, but you would put your main line on just like this. And then once we have that casting weight on our main line, you take the end of your main line, double it over, tie a simple overhand knot that creates a loop. So just like that, we've created a loop. Then you would cut off the excess tag, leaving just a little bit for line slippage. And then we would take our snelled hook like this. We'll take our main line that we made the loop with, and we're going to put it in through the snelled loop until we get above the knot and we're on the main line. Then you take the hook, put it through the main line loop, and join them together. So now we can do the same thing by putting a piece of split shot on our main line to stop our casting sinker and give us a little bit extra. And that's, you might do that in the case where you weren't able to buy small enough hooks. So the only option you had was to buy a snelled hook. So those are your 3 basic bottom bouncing setups that you can use. Now you could Carolina rig it put a bullet weight on, put an egg weight on, just as long as that main line can slide with your hook so the fish don't feel that tension when they go to bite, that's going to be your best bet. So right there, that is the most success that you're going to be able to have. You go out to any pond or lake that has trout in it in Oklahoma, that's going to be your best bet. Different types of baits that you can use. Obviously, we talked about the power bait. They're going to have some eggs that are labeled as like salmon eggs or power bait eggs. They might have stuff labeled as marshmallows or trout pellets. You can even go ahead and get like a bag or a can of corn. Corn's going to work. It's not going to have the floating properties, but if you were in like a river or something and current can kind of keep it up off the bottom, you can use that. You could use night crawlers. You could use wax worms, red worms. But for all intents and purposes, the easiest way to get on the water, stuff that doesn't spoil, as long as you keep the lid on it, some type of power bait paste or some type of, synthetic scented egg or marshmallow. Going to be your best, easiest route. So let's look over the chat bar, see what we got. Any questions? Is this pre-recorded? Yeah, it's pre-recorded, so you can watch these afterwards. See stuff about not answering questions. I don't see, if you have questions, just please put them in the chat bar, type them in, we'll answer them as we go. If you're talking at your screen, I can't hear you. So if you're asking questions, I apologize. Please type them in and we'll address them as we go. I'm going to get into our artificial lures that you can use. There's really 4 main types of artificial lures that are going to give you the most success right off the bat, right out of the box. Again, it's fishing. There's lots of different options and baits and things out there. But really the 4 primary lures that you're going to have available to use at a still body of water, even a river, are going to be inline spinners, mostly referred to as rooster tails. Most people commonly know them as rooster tails. That's a brand name, kind of like Kleenex versus tissue. Kleenex is a brand, tissue paper is what it's called. Same thing with rooster tails, inline spinner baits, super dupers, spoons, and slabs. Those are going to be your 4 main baits. There are some soft plastics that you can utilize in still water when you're fishing a pond or a lake. They're definitely down the line of what's effective. So I can show some of those towards the end. But really what you're looking for is an inline spinner or some type of shaved metal bait like a spoon, slab, or super duper. So when it comes to an inline spinner, you're looking, this is an actual rooster tail. Warden Rooster Tail, Yakima Bait Company. All it is an eye hole on a fixed shank that goes down to a connected treble, and attached to it is a piece of plastic, wood, aluminum, whatever the brand is that they make it out of. And it's just a little cylindrical tube that adds flash and flare. And then we have a jointed blade that is an inline spinner. So it spins around the blade. What you're looking for in Oklahoma, your 2 best bets are going to be an olive color. So green, this is usually packaged as frog. This one is a brown, usually packaged, the name is grasshopper. These are your 2 best bets in Oklahoma for catching fish on an inline spinner, these 2 colors. What you're looking for size, 1/8 ounce is going to be plenty. You don't need to get any bigger than that. They make 1/6 ounce, 1/4 ounce. 1/8 ounce for most people is perfect. You're able to cast it out. You can throw it a long ways. It's not heavy enough to get too far down, even in shallow water, 2 to 4 feet. And so all you're looking for is just a steady retrieve. So what you do is you cast them out. The only thing that can happen with these deals is that as you cast, you might get your line wrapped around the treble, or it may fall and the blade's not spinning. Telltale signs of that are when you cast them and you start to retrieve in, you don't feel any tension on the rod tip. You should just be feeling a steady vibration. That's what as that blade spins, it'll just feel like a very subtle pulse. And that lets you know that that blade is spinning and the bait's working correctly. You can almost ensure that that happens is when you cast out, it hits the water, it sank a little bit, you snap your bail closed or you engage your reel, give just a quick hook set, just a very subtle, not a heavy, just a quick flip of the wrist with the rod tip to get that blade spinning, and then start your steady retrieve and you'll feel that. But your green and your brown, these are going to be your two best bets. Other common ones that find success, natural colors, whites, blacks. I prefer gold spinners. They make them in a few different colors, a few different styles. I really like gold when it comes to trout as opposed to like a silver flasher or something like that. But if you want to get like flashy, something like a chartreuse or an orange, again, some type of gold or nickel plated. But what we're looking for ideally is just an inline spinner, 1/16 of an ounce, 1/8 of an ounce, just depending on whatever you're comfortable, throwing with that. So that's what you're looking for inline spinners. They come in dozens of different colors, different brands. And you're going to find them at big box retailers. You're going to see Meps, Bass Pro has their own generic version, Warden's, just an inline spinner bait, just something that's in a green or brown, gold flasher, 16th ounce, 8th ounce. You're going to find success with those. Cast them parallel with the shoreline. Great thing about fishing still water is you can fan cast. There's no current. Like any species of fish, fishing wind-blown sides where the most bait has ended up. So our next bet, and these are actually my favorite, is what's called the Super Duper. So Super Duper is just a shaved piece of metal, comes out of the box, looks just like this. They come in a few different sizes, but unlike our inline spinners or our spoons, slabs, lots of other baits, they're not labeled as ounces. So they come 500 is the smallest, then 501, 502, 503. I like a 501. That's kind of like a 1/16 ounce. 502s, those are going to be kind of your mid-range. This is my favorite one. This is just a gold. It's called Prism Light. So it basically has a piece of metallic tape that's on there. And as this goes through the water, you reel it straight in, just a slow, steady retrieve, and it creates a wobble. When they come out of the box, they look just like this. You can press that shaved piece of metal in to create a tighter wobble as it goes through the water and a faster fall rate, or you can widen it like that to create a slower, more erratic wobble. But typically, they come out of the box, they're pretty parallel. That's going to work fine. Cast them straight out, reel them straight in. They come in a few different colors. I like the gold with the Prism Light. Here's a gold one that doesn't have that tape on it. So it's just straight gold, and you can see the difference in the flash off of the light. This one gives off, more reflective properties. So I like this one. But they make them in a silver, same deal. That Prism Light, 501, 500, a little bit smaller. And then they make those silver ones that don't have the tape on it. This is a good backup one if you're looking to add some flash, is one that's the white, the rainbow trout kind of metallic. And then they make kind of a chartreuse orange if you're looking for something that was just a little bit flashier. So those are kind of your top two lures. I go back and forth on these two inline spinners as being my top trout catching bait, or the gold Super Duper. Last couple of years, I've really started to favor the Super Duper over the inline spinners, but they're both super effective. So our next two types of baits are going to be our spoons and our slabs. So we'll start with the spoons. And again, we're looking for something that's either in a gold pattern, a red pattern, or some type of natural color. These are going to be labeled 1/4 ounce, 1/8 ounce, 1/16 ounce. 8th ounce and 16th ounce are great. All it is it's a concave piece of metal. Comes with a loose eye hole on it, so gives it that extra wobble. All these baits, you could use a swivel. It's not necessary. You can tie right onto the line. You're going to get plenty of action on these. So with the spoon, like that. It's got that concave. So when it catches the water and it's going, creating just a wobble. So essentially like the super duper. But golds, something in trout, they come gold, orange plated, gold or silver and blue plated, red plated, doesn't really matter. But spoons are a good option, just an erratic wobble. You don't need to get fancy with the retrieves on any of them. Just all of these artificial lures, you're just looking for a straight cast out, steady retrieve in, maybe even a slow to steady retrieve. With spoons and slabs, you can cast them out, let them fall down to the bottom, pick your rod tip up, let them come up and flutter back down. That's effective for like your temperate bass species, and it can be effective for your trout species as well. It's just not necessary, and it's an added step for fishing. When the great thing about trout fishing and these types of baits is it's a very simple form of fishing. It's cast out, steady retrieve in, no other type of work that you need to do to get bit with. So for cast masters, which are slabs, which is a shaved piece of metal. So instead of being concave, we have our thinner end up towards our eye hole and our thicker end back here towards the rear. Some of them have a feather or, some type of fur tail, synthetic tail. Either or is fine. And again, we're looking for a 16th ounce or an 1/8 ounce. Those are going to be your ideal. And you're just going to cast these out. And you're going to straight retrieve them in. Again, like the spoon, you can let it fall straight down to the bottom, jig it up, let it flutter down. Jig it up, let it flutter down, and they can hit it on the fall. But what I like about trout lures, super dupers, spoons, slabs, inline spinners, is that your hook point is at the very back of the bait. So when you're retrieving this in, most predatory fish like to attack from behind and from below. That's how they're going about getting after when they're trailing a bait. Well, having that hook point all the way in the back almost ensures that any type of strike is going to get bit. So having just a steady, slow retrieve in where you're not as worried about there being slack in your line, the hook or the fish itself, when it hits it, just the little bit of tension and tightness that you have of that slack being out of the line when you straight cast and retrieve is almost setting the hook for you. So they hammer the back of that and they're almost hooked before you even need to pull through. So that's the good part about using, all these different types of trout lures where you have a rear facing hook, as opposed to swim baits or something where the hook may be off the top or in the middle of the bait or towards the front of the bait profile. A couple of other options that you have for artificial bait when fishing still water are going to be some type of soft plastic. I don't think they're as effective in still water as they can be in moving water like a river or creek, but just something like a tube. Just a tube with like a 1/64th or a 1/32nd if you're in moving water, maybe a 1/16th ounce if you're in still water, so you can cast it a little bit farther. But you'd work these in, reel them straight in. You can pop and hop them around, but trout will go after these. They also make things that you might be able to float underneath a stick bobber or something with like a trout worm like this, or a trout magnet that you can fish below a float of some kind. I find the soft plastics to be more effective in moving water when you can fish them beneath a float or a bobber or even just slack line and nymph. They're essentially nymphing with them. But they are options and you'll see them on the market and they can be used in still water. Some of them actually float. So they make a worm that actually has a ball on it that it's like the power egg and it floats. And you can just take your hook point and put that through the top of the ball and fish it just like you would with these power bait setups off the bottom. And that bait, soft plastic, will rise up off the bottom and it'll be there. And you can use those as well. But that pretty much covers it for, what you're really going to come in and, get the most value out of when you go, to a small urban fishery or something like that. So we still got about 15 minutes left. If anybody has any questions, I'm going to talk a little bit about fly fishing at still water areas and what you can use to be effective. Um, for the most part, what you're looking at if you're going to go fly fishing at a still body of water is the best opportunity you have to catch fish is going to be taking like a float tube or some type of pontoon, something where you can sit either in or on the water with flippers on, so you control yourself. You could accomplish the same thing in a small boat with a trolling motor as well. Um, and really, what you're doing is you're wanting to take something like a carry special, a woolly bugger, maybe some type of San Juan worm, or even one of these soft plastics, and tying it onto the end of your fly line, getting yourself out about 30, 40 feet behind you, cast out as far as you can, let it hit the water, strip some line off of your reel, get 30, 40 feet away from your fly or your bait. And then you're just going to slowly kick your paddle backwards or troll, just holding that rod out to the side. And you're just going to troll along shorelines and little channel drops and things like that. That's going to be the most effective fly fishing that you're going to get if you're going to use still water. Occasionally, there are some dry fly hatches. You will see fish that will come up and surface. In those cases, something like a zebra midge that can just get right down below the surface. In all other cases, our main bugs in Oklahoma are going to be caddis and mayflies. So you're looking at somewhere between a size 14 to size 18 caddis fly, with probably an olive or a tan body, or you're looking at some type of mayfly dry with a pale or like a yellow body, maybe some purple flash in it, and real small with those size 16 to like size 22. And you can get some top water action occasionally at some of the still bodies of water, but for all intents and purposes, the big takeaway for trout fishing at smaller bodies of water on still water is just a medium action rod, 6 pound test, bottom bouncing with power bait to start. Typically, you're looking for coves or coves with points. When it comes to targeting these fish, they don't get to spend enough time in the body of water to really establish territory. They're stocked at usually the boat ramp. Or the easiest access for a hauling truck to get to the body of water, dump them in. From there, they're probably going to stick pretty close to where they got dumped in the water to begin with. They're going to cruise the shorelines. They're going to look for channel breaks. They're going to look for easy meals. But they are hatchery raised fish. They're used to eating from a singular food source, whether it's somebody with a bag throwing the pellets out or a fish feeder. But they're used to eating some type of fish food, which is why power eggs, power bait in a pellet looking form with scent is going to get you just the most bets right off the top. As we get farther into January and February, water gets a little bit colder, fish get a little bit more active, there's more fish per acre, they've been stocked enough. Then you start looking at your artificials, your super duper, your inline spinner. Especially in the afternoons and the evening time, those fish are going to get a little bit higher in the water column, a little bit closer to the shoreline. You may find more or just as much success utilizing artificial as you would with the power bait. But typically, all of December, November, power bait, fixed location, maybe try 2 or 3 different spots on a body of water, getting back into coves or little shallow bays where those fish like to, find easy food sources. Those are the places you want to look. Looking for deeper water or more open water. While you may catch some fish, you're kind of limiting. You really want to kind of trap those fish in. So if you're looking to get the most amount of bites, or you're looking to get fish where you can keep them, take them home, clean them, and eat them, like a Perry Triple C, for example, right at the boat ramp where those fish are stocked, straight across from the boat ramp is a shallow bay that leads out to deeper water. It's got a nice point on it, and it comes out of the main channel, and it sits basically on this 50-yard shelf. Those trout love to cruise that shelf. Immediately behind that is a very narrow, shallow cove that has a good deep channel that cuts up into really shallow water, and in the back of it, it basically shelves out into about a foot or two of water. typically those are the two best places to fish for trout at Perry Triple C. As we get into January and February, more fish get in the water, you'll start to see higher catch rates on the other end of the lake, the eastern end of the lake. There's another cove over there where little Black Bear Creek comes in, which is the feeder creek of the actual lake. And they'll get back in there. There's a pavilion. Nice thing about Perry Triple C, lots of great bank access, easy for people of all ability, physical, kid, age. Like, it's just a really good accommodation. It does have a day fishing fee. You pay it at the honor box when you come in and drive in. Same thing goes for our urban trout ponds. If you're in the Tulsa area, you go over to Veterans. There's a little cul-de-sac at the far, what would that be? I guess the western end of that pond, and it coves out, and you have the two pavilions that are on the north end of the pond. That comes out of deeper water, comes up onto a shelf into the cove. That cove right there is a very easy place to catch trout. You go to Route 66 Park. There's a cove on what would be the far end of the park, and then there's an island on the close end of the park. Those fish are gonna, kind of go through those islands. It goes on to kind of a shelf that's in there, and then you have a shallow cove on the far end of it. Edwards Park, same thing. There's little shallow bays on the north end where they get stocked at, and there's two fishing piers. And basically the best fishing on that for trout is in between those two fishing piers, where there's kind of a drainage creek that comes in, kind of defines a shelf, and those trout just sit up on that shelf. Betcher is kind of a bowl. Same thing goes for like Sunset Lake. You're going to get kind of a drawn out where you end up with kind of a shallow cove. Those are the areas that you're looking for when you're going to fish still water. It's just going to give you the best opportunity. Start with power bait. If you're catching a ton of fish on power bait, and you haven't reached your limit, or you're not planning on keeping a limit, but you're catching them in, you're getting bit so often, which in trout fishing, a bite every, let's say 5 to 10 minutes. If you're getting bit every 5 to 10 minutes, that's a pretty good bite rate. Lots of fish are in that area. Then you might look at switching it up, going to some type of artificial, throwing it in the same area, and see if you can get the same type of reaction out of those fish on artificial as you do with bait. And that'll just add to your trout fishing repertoire as you go. But those are really the main keys to successful trout fishing. If you received the link to this email or the link to this course through an email because you registered through Go Outdoors, you have my contact information at the bottom of that email, phone number, call, text, email me. If you ever have any questions, you're looking for some trout information or other fishing information, that's what I'm here for. Over in the chat, I'm going to throw in our trout angler guide that you may or may not received. It's great. It's going to list all of our fishing areas in the state, along with kind of tidbits of information, fishing tips, but some of the other things that may help you out on a trip if you're going to try to go somewhere where you haven't been before. Maybe you've only been there once. It's going to have where to camp areas, bait and tackle nearby, contact numbers, other kind of amenity information that may help you plan that next trip. So I encourage you to check out our trout angler guide. It's got good information in there. And then this Ask an Angler series that we're doing on trout, this is the lake and pond edition. We did fly fishing this morning. We did bait and artificial yesterday, and tomorrow we're doing 3 covering our 3 river fisheries, our 2 year-round ones, Lower Mountain Fork and Lower Illinois, as well as the Blue River, which is a seasonal trout fishery. So we have those tomorrow. You can always find any of our Ask an Anglers through our Outdoor Oklahoma channel on our playlist, Ask an Angler. There's over 30 videos on there covering lots and lots of different fishing topics. If you ever have a topic that maybe we haven't covered, or you'd like to maybe have a body of water covered, or a species, anything you can think of, let us know. We try to tailor the content on these Ask an Anglers for you, the angler. Can't do these without you. We want you to be successful. We want you to get out there, build confidence, catching fish, and just enjoying the outdoors and everything they have to offer. So with that, we got about 5 minutes left, but I'll end the stream early if we don't really have any other questions that pop up. Thanks everybody for joining us. Have some great holidays. Hope you're able to get out there, get some trout fishing done. And we look forward to a great 2023 for some new fishing adventures. So if you need a question, you know where to find my information. Reach out to me. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and end the stream. Appreciate everybody being here. Stay safe. Best of luck. Enjoy the fishing.